Hey, LS Church. This is our podcast where we sit down with Sunday's speaker and recap their message with questions and conversation. This week's pod is on August 3rd's message, Clouds and Crackers, with Pastor Steph. Let's check it out. What's up, everyone? My name's Caden, and welcome to our Sunday Recap podcast. I'm here with Pastor Steph, and this is our 25th episode.
25.
Yes.
That's my number, you know.
Like sports number?
Yeah, it was like my sports number.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a uniform anymore.
Yeah?
It's kind of like carried with me.
And 2025?
We're in 2025.
It's the 50th year. This is good. So this is going to be good.
I think it's going to be good. It's
Okay.
got my number on it.
Good. Okay, so let's, before we jump into your message this week, kind of getting back into the swing of things around campus, how's that been going? Like, you know, with you and we always talk about August as like our new year, really, just because of the school season setting up and everything. And
I love August.
Yeah.
It's refreshing for me.
Yeah.
I love the summer, but when summer's closing out, it's the Lord's perfect timing. He knows that we need new seasons.
Yes.
So campus-wide, we are slowing down and getting more into a preparation season, which is nice for my pace here. And then personally, my kids are going back to school. And don't get me wrong, I love my kids. I love to be with them all the time.
Yeah.
But I am never, ever alone.
Yeah.
Like never, ever. There's always somebody with me at all times. And so when my kids are in school, it gives me a little more of a window that I can go home sometimes and study and just have a little bit of peace. Right now, if I want peace, it's at 4 a.m. And so that's the window, you know. So I'm looking forward to a little bit more like peace during the lunch break, you know?
Right, yeah.
Things like that.
And you have like your routines, right? Like when things are really busy with all the kids at home during the summertime, you come and prep at the office.
Right.
Right. But then when everyone comes to the office and they go to school and the home's empty, you can prep at the home. So now this is home prep season too.
Right. So now I'm spending a lot of time here on the weekends when no one's here prepping because I have to find a place that no one is.
Yeah.
And that's hard for me. And then I have really bad FOMO.
I'm about to say you got
FOMO
a terrible
kills
case.
me. I hate being alone, but I must be alone.
Yeah.
To do what I need to do. So.
And you got to flip the house. It's about to be fall.
I do a good fall flip.
You go hard for fall?
I go really, my kids know it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's like a mystery day.
Yeah.
Like they go to school and they come home and it's like pumpkin spice, everything.
Yeah.
I make them fall kits because they have to prepare for fall.
Oh, okay.
So
what would be in a fall kit?
A fall kit would have like fall hand sanitizer for your bag, maybe a cute fall mug, some fall socks, some new slippers for the season. It's gonna help you transition into the winter.
So how does Tyler like all of this, like hand sanitizer, mug, socks?
I just give him some like candy. Actually, last year he was at college, and so I was like, well, he doesn't get a fall kit. So I think he's done.
Yeah.
I think he's an
retired
adult now. And
see, I don't like that logic. Let me tell you why. Because my mom still gives me Easter baskets.
we'll talk through your logic then. In like 20 years from now, when you have adult children, especially if you have, because I have 5, so it's very expensive.
Yeah.
I'm still holding on to Christmas, where my 25-year-old gets the same amount of gifts as the 11-year-old.
That's nice.
But I just don't know how long we do this.
Yeah.
You know, and now, you know, my kids will start having kids one day.
Yeah. Well, you don't. Well, I think you may be a little bit past the point of the 25-year-old. You might just have to lock that one in for the rest of the time because you should have transitioned.
And you know, and I always want to keep things fair. And I'm like, well, technically, it's not really fair because if I start, you know, cutting him off or don't cut him off, he's always getting many more presents and Christmases than everybody else because he was first.
That's true.
So I don't really know, but right now we're locked in. Christmas, I'm very specific. We do. Everybody gets like a big gift, which we used to say was the Santa gift, but they always know it's us. So it's like that funny thing that we do. But then under the tree, they get 3 gifts only. Because Jesus himself got 3 from the wise men, and I feel it's not fair that we should get more than Jesus.
Oh wow, so, this is really deep present theology.
It's deep present theology. It's really just, I like to make everything into things, and so we've made these into things, and it's not really fair because I actually want to give the kids lots of things, and so they're one gift. Every package is like a multi-package, like a Fit Fab Fun box. You don't know what's going to be in it,
right?
And I stack it.
Yes.
And so.
You know what's
But
funny?
there's only 3 packages wrapped.
What I think is funny is that what we just did literally is what everyone does. As soon as summer's over, we go, what's fall? Okay, here's fall. Okay, now Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's how it is on campus too.
It is. But for me personally, I do love fall. I will hold on to it as long as I can. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
I love smells. I love I can feel. You could take me outside and be like, what season is it? I could tell you. I can like smell
But we
fall
don't get
coming.
true falls here. Not
but we
often.
get fronts, fall fronts, and I recognize those.
The cold. I think everyone's ready for a cold front right now. That would be amazing.
Nice, a little crisp air.
Yes. That'll be good.
I love it. So yeah, it's fall season.
So
I'm in my
fall's
happy
rolling
place. I'm like counting down the days till everyone's back in school. I really don't like routines, but I'm too like everywhere. If I don't have a routine, then I don't feel very fulfilled because I don't get anything done.
Right.
So the routines help keep me. So I'm about to have those.
So they all go back to school when?
Aspen goes back the 12th, and the girls go back the 13th.
That's next week.
Next Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah.
Wow.
We're close.
Okay, there we
We're
go.
close.
Almost got them out. Back to school shopping's all that's good.
85%.
I feel like a lot of times now, like the teachers at orientation give the kids a list, and then you shop the first week, and you have to get them by like the end of the week or something.
Yes.
Which is crazy. But
we're almost there. So
almost there.
things are looking up.
That's good. Speaking of this fall weather, and watch this transition. Speaking of the fall weather and the clouds that are rolling in with the cold front, let's talk about your message, Clouds and Crackers.
Clouds and Crackers.
Okay, so a week before was It's Time to Move. Now it's Clouds and Crackers. Now, you love this title.
It's just so fun. I may or may not have little emojis in my notes this week to match.
You should put those on the screen.
Along the way. There might be some clouds, some little desert cactuses to represent different parts.
And really that's just an analogy, because a lot of people, I had a couple people ask me after service, because they know we did the podcast, they're like, what are
these clouds and crackers?
They got the cloud, but they were like, what are the crackers?
What are the crackers?
And I was like,
well, it was a stretch, but I loved the title so much I just went for it. But yeah, in the wilderness, and I think we opened with some scriptures, but in the wilderness, God said that he was going to lead the people with a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, and that's how they'd know where the presence of God was. The cloud would show them where to go, and the pillar of fire would actually give them light. And then God would provide them with their food, since they weren't able to really travel, and he was asking them to stay in the presence. He was going to be the provider of their needs, and so he told them that he would be feeding them with manna and quail. And so he gave very specific instructions. And I have never seen or tasted manna, but it seems to be kind of a cracker-like substance that would almost be like a wafer. In my brain, I see it like those communion crackers that we eat that kind of taste like styrofoam.
Okay, yes.
But I think since God made it, it would probably taste, I bet it's good.
Yeah.
I bet it's good.
Yeah, for sure.
But it would just show up. This manna, these crackers would show up to provide for them. And so that was the message. Clouds and crackers, really recognizing the provision that God already has for us and seeking that.
That's good. And so, it really is, like we've been talking about recently, just like a huge parallel to the children of Israel and us, and seeing, because we talked about this on the podcast recently, just like how we look at the children of Israel now. But it really is like a great reflection of us. And when we think things that they do are silly, or I can't believe you would do that, like God's looking at us the exact same way.
It's so us. And we look at the Old Testament period, whether it be the journey through the wilderness, or once we started getting into the era of having all these kings, and we're looking at these people and we're like, oh my gosh, how are they so stupid? How could they not? God just parted the Red Sea, and now they're making images to golden calves. While Moses is up on that mountain talking to God, this is all crazy. But like, we literally do it, and it's even worse. Because not only do we have the Bible as a reference point to look at, which they really didn't have the Bible like we have it. Not only do they not have the Bible, they didn't have the Holy Spirit indwelling on the inside of them. So I think we can be much
too harsh on them.
And maybe not really going like, man, Lord, sometimes we can just be just as stupid. So it's not to really degrade ourselves or anyone else, but to recognize with some humility, like, man, it's so easy to get deceived. It's so easy to fall into patterns of stupidity without even realizing it. So the whole Old Testament, I don't know, it's gold to me. Because I feel like it helps me stay out of trouble some.
So, you talk about the wilderness, and I think you open up the message in the wilderness specifically and the title, like, wilderness survival, right?
Yeah.
And I think a couple of messages ago, maybe it was this when you talked about like having like a wilderness survival guide sort of theme as far as like the children of Israel, right? But like, you also said that this wilderness season has such a negative connotation to it, you know, and how not necessarily it has to be negative. How is that? I mean, like, when you think of someone being stranded in the wilderness, what are some verbiage that they can flip that, and why is the wilderness not a negative season sometimes?
Yeah, I've really tried to think of some creative branding, the way to work the word, like the wilderness, because it's going to be wild fun. Things wasn't working out for me.
Yeah, that's a nice one. But the wild and wilderness.
Because there's like a ride at Disney.
Yeah,
it's like it's wild in the wilderness, kind of thing. Okay,
I don't know. I'll take your word for it.
Okay, I'm going to stop.
Okay.
So the wilderness, but really, I was kind of explaining Sunday that maybe we could relate to the season of being a child.
Yeah.
Where as a child growing up, you are learning how to trust your parents, and they're going to teach you wisdom. And it's a season where you aren't really trying to go make your own way. You're actually trying to learn how to respond to the way that's already been made for you. And in that, you're growing and strengthening.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. I think the wilderness is the season where He knows that we're children. He knows that we're going to make stupid mistakes. It's the season where the mistakes aren't as costly. You go into the promised land and you start making some crazy mistakes and you start running into battles that God did not tell you to run into.
Yeah.
You'll get yourself killed.
Yeah.
Where in the wilderness, I feel like it was a season of God's kindness.
Yeah.
Where He was letting them have wiggle room to make mistakes, wiggle room to go, they're not quite ready, they don't have enough trust in me, they don't have enough confidence, to wiggle room to go, man, they're still a little too dependent on Egypt, and it's clouding their judgment.
Yeah.
And so it was His kindness that allowed us to do that. And I think that's how it is for us sometimes. We're such in a hurry to get to we're so destination motivated to get there. And really it's God's kindness that's going, I'm not going to take you there yet.
Yeah.
Remember, we kind of talked about that map
a
little bit, and it really was an 11-day journey from Egypt to where God promised them that they could be. And I'm sure they were all eager to get there.
Yeah.
But it said that God took them the longer way because they weren't ready for the battles that they would face. They weren't strong enough. And He knew if you went into a battle that you were not prepared for, you'd get yourself killed. And so He was trying to go, let me slow you down and strengthen you. So the wilderness is a season of strengthening and structure. So that when it's time to go into the promised land and begin partnering with the Lord as a soldier, as a warrior that is equipped, you're strong enough to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of the phrasing behind that we can hear nowadays is like, thank God for unanswered prayers sometimes, And I think that's true. That's a good point that you say about being strengthened and seeing that as a strengthening season, because I think we have a lot of things in our life that we're like, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for this. And if that was given to us all at once, then it would crush us, and then we'd, it's interesting to think of the fact that that's the mindset you should have in that season of like, okay, so I guess the question is to you is our best choice in that moment to sit around and be like, okay, if it ain't answered yet, that means I'm not ready,
Right.
So what do I need to do to get ready, can you lean too far in that? Can you lean too far into what can I do in that season? Is there a other side of the thing?
Yeah, because sometimes I've seen a dangerous turn sometimes where we go, well, God's sovereign and He knows everything, and using that as our excuse to do nothing. And just I'll wait for the Lord when He knows His timing, and He, even sometimes people say things to me like, everything happens for a reason, and I'm like, yeah, sometimes the reason you're stupid. Sometimes the reason is you're letting your flesh win. Sometimes the reason is because we were navigating situations through our flesh, and now you and whoever have an emotional, relational fallout because we actually weren't walking in the Spirit. So I wouldn't say everything happens for a reason, like acting like God did it. But He does promise you turn all things out for good and to lead us and guide us. And so I think that we have a responsibility in this wilderness season to be actively growing and learning and seeking and contending and try to walk through the wilderness. But not question when we feel like He's holding us back.
Right.
And that's the exchange that I think we're learning.
Yeah, and I think too, something is that, when you go into the wilderness, right, there obviously is a promised land. In your mind, you have a promised land. And what God's plan is a promised land probably even greater than what you think it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Above your expectations. Probably not even close to your expectations, because it ended up even better than what you can, think or imagine. But also, in that time, there are still promises in the wilderness. Like we talk about manna, and this guiding cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, right? Like these things are still like little promises, and this manna that we're recognizing and making sure we're recognizing it as God's provision, because I feel like us as Christians, we can get really bitter in that season, right? And not recognizing that even when you're in the wilderness, it's not like He left you. Having the idea of being like, in the wilderness, God isn't with me here. Like, no, like He's actually the one walking you through, holding your hand, and providing these things for you. Yeah. And really seeing Him in that season and recognizing Him as a provider. You talked about in the message about what we're depending on, right? And so of those promises, that manna, the crackers, whatever it is that we're depending on in that season, that wilderness season, when we lock in and say, this is what I'm depending on, and we operate on that, then it's better. But the problem with the children of Israel was that they were depending on that, but they were having wishful thinking about what it used to be like, when they were back into Egypt. Maybe just talk about the concept of glorifying Egypt and how silly that is.
I know, and it's really difficult, because I think Egypt, it really represents the kingdom of man, the kingdom of this world, where the enemy is actually the ruler of the kingdom of the world. So like every bit of that we're living in is really designed to feed the appetite of the flesh, which leads to destruction. And so the tools and the ways that we work around it, and the systems that we've built, and the mindsets and the defense mechanisms, they fit in this kingdom. And when you bring them into God's kingdom, they're inefficient. And God's kingdom and God's tools are so different that you can't really have a mixture. And I think that's part of that Egypt to wilderness process here, is like God's trying to get Egypt out of you so that you can even have vision for the promised land. And that's something I have so much in my brain right now about the wilderness, the promised land, and faith and trust. Like I have my whiteboard in my office, you see it, it's full of it. Every notepad I have, my phone is full. So I'm trying to like not jump ahead of myself, but I don't even think we have proper vision for the promised land. We keep thinking it's glorified Egypt. And if you think the promised land is Egypt with Jesus sprinkled on top, in this system, you get to be Pharaoh. You're missing it. And I think that's why sometimes we don't understand why the wilderness has to take so long. I'm ready for the promised land. I've been waiting on that since Egypt. Like, I don't think the promised land is fully what we think it is. I think it's actually going to be better, but we don't even have capacity, because our capacity is Egyptian training. Our capacity is the good life is wealth, influence, power, money. That's not exactly the good life. And so even until we can wrap our head around maybe the good life that God has for us is something far beyond that, I don't even think we can begin to unravel the depths of how much our mindset is actually really kind of contaminated by Egypt. And that's the wilderness season. Trying to uncontaminate our mind a little bit. I think that's a really strong point right there, that what our vision of the promised land is. And if you think it's anything like Egypt, you're wrong. It takes us back to Pastor James' message with the kingdom of man, or the empire of man versus the kingdom of God. Like it was flipped. It was completely flipped. It was completely opposite. So I think that's good. And I think we talk about a lot of times, sometimes the American version of Christianity is man's empire with Jesus sprinkled on top, right? And it's my life how it is right now plus Jesus, but that verbiage is even wrong. It's not your life plus Jesus, it's not you plus Jesus. It's like subtracting you out of it, and I think that you spoke kind of on this, but once again, going back to Pastor James's message, you spoke on this cloud versus this current, right? Like the current, like which one are you following? So what do you mean when you say cloud versus current? Like cloud, we can represent, as the kingdom, and current as the empire of man. But how can we get distracted? So what is what each one represents, and how do we know the difference on what we're following? Well, clouds, obviously, just like you said, the presence of God and what He's leading us into. where his voice is the most impactful voice, and we respond to that. And then as for the current, I mean, I think it all goes down to flesh. We've talked a lot recently about just fear, how the fear really manipulates a lot of our things. And so if to get on a smaller practical level, the current, for some people, they're really driven by their feelings. That's the current they can get sucked into. Do I have self-worth? What do people see? Do I fit in, right? Some people, their current they get sucked into is maybe the current of the world, of distractions and things that happen that kind of suck them in. For some people, it's just busyness and responsibility. And sometimes the current is religion, being so sold out to God and doing the thing and really missing Jesus in the process. So it's really just kind of like, what becomes the thing that what are you really following? Like, what is dictating your day? What is dictating your moods? And if we're honest, there's so many times that dictation is not the cloud. It is whatever's going on. Our financial situation, well, then that's the current for you. What is that thing that really is God in your life that sets the tone of your day and your situations?
That's good. I mean, you even said busyness. Like in the message you said, I think you said the phrase busyness is not biblical. You talked about GPS as well and following the GPS, right? And the rerouting. You even said, in Google we trust. I'll give you time to defend yourself on that.
I said this was not good teachings here, and it was a long time ago, before we were pastors. But yeah, we literally rely sometimes on our actual GPS in our car better than we will rely on God. And it might take us a minute to get in alignment with what God's doing, and then when God pivots, well, we're committed to what He already said, and we don't want to pivot off of what that is. Even though doors are closing and our heart is feeling that pivot, we're just like, no, we have a plan and we're going to stick to it. And that's not really how God operates.
And the rerouting process too. Like, do you trust the rerouting? Because like we said, we can be locked on our thing, or we feel like we can see how to get there, in our eyes, and then we get rerouted. It's like, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to take this route that God's given you? How can you tell the difference between your route and God's route?
Well, I think there's so much. That's why I think the wilderness is so important, because you're learning to tell the difference between God's route and your route. And I think it's difficult. I think when you have a mixture of your flesh in there, it can convince you of anything. I mean, we were talking about purpose a few minutes ago, and purpose, although God's significance is divinely created inside of us all, purpose can sometimes just be a prostitution of that. And we get so busy trying to find out our purpose that we're not even looking to the purpose giver. It's not really about what our purpose is. It's about what He wants to do in our life. And if we're lucky enough to make it to the promised land, that's when we actually are able to fulfill our purpose. And I feel like we all want purpose when it benefits us, but when it's like, oh, well, then go lowly, it's like, oh, Jesus fulfilling His purpose was Him dying on the cross. Right? And so I think sometimes it's hard because there's so many mixtures of His voice in us, and we've got to learn to get each out. But it is confusing sometimes. Is this me? Is this God? I think when stakes are high, I think obedience is hard. But I think what's harder than obedience is knowing if what you're hearing is really the voice of God. Especially, it's easy to jump on obedience when you like what He's saying, but what about when He's not? You don't like what He's saying. For me, sometimes that's an indicator if I'm hearing from God or not, because usually if it's me, it'll feel a lot more comfortable and sound a lot better to what I was wanting to do anyways. So I sometimes feel like God always usually tell that. I know it's God when it's the opposite of what I would pick. And that's not always true, but many times I think it is true. Yeah, definitely. I want to go to this certain part that you were talking about in the message, and it was this striking the rock parallel, right? And you talked about in the Bible there was like 3 different times that was an action to do, was striking the rock. But there were 3 different almost responses from God, right? So how is doing one action but over 3 different times? How do they all have different outcomes? I'm glad we have time to unpack this a little bit. I felt like I was racing through this part on Sunday. But originally, when Moses was leading the children of Israel, it was part of the provision, right? Was actually so there was actually multiple things besides clouds and crackers. There was the clouds of presence. The fire was going to be the power of God. It said He brought them light. When you see God's movement, that's bringing you light. God's interaction in our lives brings us light. Then there was of course the cloud. I mean the crackers, the manna. But there was also water, living water that would flow, that would be provided again by his Spirit. And so when they're first moving through that wilderness, I'm going to look through my notes. So I'm going to grab the exact place in Exodus if you want to go to it. Okay, it's in Exodus 17. God tells Moses to strike the rock for water to come out, and that would be the water they would drink from. And so Moses does that. It's actually one of the first times that the children of Israel saw the hand of God move. And by Moses' obedience, water flowed from that. And so fast forward the clock, 40 years later, they're all real frustrated and fed up. And I'm sure Moses is like, I mean, if you've ever been a manager of people, that's a rough job. So I'm sure he's tired. He's old. I mean, he's like, what, like 900 years old? I mean, it's been rough, right? Yeah. And I don't know if he was 900, but... And so he's fed up, and they're right outside that promised land, and it's time to go in, and they're still kind of murmuring, complaining, and same reason that he's wanting to strike the rock. And so God actually tells him to speak to the rock. But and again, this is a little bit of my interpretation, trying to look through it through my lens. I think it's possible that because of frustration, he's not even clearly hearing the voice of Lord, and he strikes the rock, and that actually becomes biblically the reason that he was unable to go into the promised land. I would love to unpack that more, because that knocked me for a while, being like, Lord, you're so tough. But another day. But he strikes this rock, and ends up being, there's a consequence for him being out of alignment with God. And I'm like, whoa, man, Lord, that's just like a sleight of the hand. And then you see it later on, and that was in Exodus 20 that incident, Numbers 20, excuse me. And then you see it later on in Kings. This is way fast forward after the children of Israel made it to the promised land. They've got kings in place. There was a king in Israel named Jehoash, and he had been consulting the voice of Elisha, sort of as a reference. The kings of Israel, really, none of them faithfully served the Lord, but some of them would kind of like listen enough to give them a little bit of an advantage. And so this king Jehoash found that Elisha was about to die, and so he goes to consult him because he was scared he was about to go into battle with Assyria and wanted to know what was going to happen. And so Elisha begins to prophesy to him and tells him to shoot some arrows out the window, which he did. And then he says, okay, now take the remaining arrows and strike the ground. And he strikes it 2 times. And then Elisha's like, well, since you didn't strike it enough, now you're not going to have victory more than just 2 times, and yada yada. So when I read those, I'm like, okay, Lord, Moses doesn't get to go to the promised land because he didn't strike it. He struck it too much. And now Jehoash is going to lose the battle because he struck it not enough. Is it more? Is it less? What's your target here? And I really feel like God began to kind of show me that the target is just alignment with him. And that first time, Moses was so dependent. Moses was way in over his head, and he's strictly just listening to the Lord's voice. But by the time he had this happen again, he had parted Red Seas, he had gone up to the mountain face to face with God, and he had a little bit of his own confidence, maybe, or maybe it was his own frustration that caused him to go ahead of God and put himself out there, and even going back to things that worked in the past instead of going like, hold on, whoa, God said speak this time. He didn't say strike. I'm going to be so sensitive and in tune. His own arrogance and pride could have been what got him to take that stance. So was God really addressing technical deals? I don't feel like God's a technical kind of person. I feel like he tried to make salvation so open that nobody could miss. So I felt like, it wasn't that he was mad about the striking, it was the posture. Moses was ahead. And then you look at Jehoash, and Jehoash was behind. And I was looking through that. I'm like, man, was it that Jehoash was never wanting to be in alignment with God himself? He was just using Elisha. And it was always Elisha's conversation with the Lord. And so he was always doing the minimum that he had to do to hear the voice of the Lord, instead of really partnering with it. And I think that can be us. It does get confusing sometimes. Well, what's confusing is because there's this mixture of our flesh. There's this mixture of sometimes my pride that gets me to go ahead of God. And God didn't actually say that. He said this, you went way ahead. And then when I didn't come through for you, you said I wasn't faithful. No, you were arrogant and prideful and stepped ahead. And then there's us sometimes that just want to do the bare minimum and go, oh, God's sovereign, I'm just going to sit back here and do nothing. And God's going, no, that consequence. And so it's difficult, and if we're not really careful, sometimes we're trying to find out what God is saying, what's the detail, what's the obedience, and instead I think sometimes it's going like, I got to get rid of my flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, I just need your spirit to, if your spirit will infuse me, it'll flush the flesh.
Yeah.
And if the flesh is flushed, I'll hear you just fine.
Yeah.
I don't have a hearing problem.
Right.
I actually have a flesh problem.
Right.
And that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And so that's the wilderness, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's learning to flush out the flesh, because the promised land, your ears have to be so keen to the voice of God.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think there's so many things to unpack there. Sometimes we overstep, sometimes we understep, sometimes we're, we think that the recipe is what happened last time. I think we were having a conversation before you spoke on Sunday morning, and it was just kind of like, Moses can look at that moment of when he struck the rock, right? And he was in the will of God when he struck the rock. Mm-hmm. But he can just take the action and think that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And so he can be outside of the will of God, but strike the rock, but then get a different result like he did before, right? But that wasn't the ingredient, And I think, we talked about it. Sometimes we can do that as believers. We can be like, God came through when I did this.
Yep.
And so I'm going to do that again. Right?
Yeah.
But really, that's not why God came through, because you did this,
Right. It's not because of the formula. We try to be honest, formulas with God are easier. That's what the religious spirit is. It's going, I'm not going to stay in alignment with his spirit. I'm not going to follow the cloud. I'm not going to let every day be so subjective to God's spirit.
Yeah.
I'm going to write these rules.
Yeah.
This equals this. If I do that, God will do this.
Yeah.
And it's actually going like, I'm going to take the power seat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make God do it based on my things. And it's actually lazy Christianity in some ways.
Yeah. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's either Elijah or Elisha, but it's when it's him versus the prophets of Baal.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Elijah.
Like, there is a formula that these prophets of Baal are doing, this rain dance, right, to get him to bring down. Was it fire? Right? Or I think so. And like, they had a formula, and they were doing this formula over and over and over again. Like, we can find ourselves identifying with them sometimes because we try to replicate these formulas, and you take sometimes, if I do this and this and this, then this is going to happen, right? But God doesn't work that way.
Yep.
And that's us taking the empire of man and being able to be like, well, we're all about systems and doing all these things. And trust me, those things work, maybe in the business world, and I'm not saying that you walk around with every day is a whatever, but there is a happy medium as far as to what are you doing that you need to do your part as far as making yourself available to God, and then what are you doing? Are you depending on him, or are you figuring things out on your own?
And I think what's your real objective too? That's such a part that even Elijah, going back to that story, I mean, that was a pretty wild thing, and if you read it, God didn't tell him to do that.
Yeah.
And so then you can go, well, okay, the formula is you only do what God says and you make sure it's God. Yeah, but I don't know if God told Elijah to do that.
Yeah.
But I feel that Elijah had graduated the season of trusting God and was now in a season of the faith in God. He was now partnering with the Lord. And I don't know if God specifically told him to do that, but he had vision for who God was and what he wanted to do. He didn't want to glorify himself and go, look how great of a prophet I am. He wanted to glorify the Lord. And so instead of just being a servant of God, he was now partnering with God because he understood the assignment.
Yeah.
And the assignment is to the glory of the Lord.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Christians get it wrong so often. We don't understand the assignment. We keep making the assignment about us and our glorification, us doing great things for God, and us being miracle workers, or for us to be having the job we want and be blessed, Those are sometimes things that end up, but the assignment is for the glory of the Lord. And when you understand the assignment and that's your objective, the people in Egypt, they only had vision to be Pharaoh. That was the graduated step. You could be Pharaoh. So it was hard when they came to the wilderness. They kept trying to be Pharaoh. They kept trying to have full power, full abundance, all the wealth.
Right. And God's like, that's not my operating system.
That's not the assignment. Yeah. So that was part of it too. Changing the value system.
Yeah. And so, you even talk about Elijah being able to, he's out of the graduating season of trusting in God, right? So the question is, what journey do we need to go on to get to that faith season? What are the pieces there, Right now we're talking about, provision, right? And understanding And really, I guess this message is just recognizing that provision, but also relying on it too, and not double dipping into man's provision versus God's provision, because one sustains you for now, and one's, it's the water, the woman at the well. I got water that
you know nothing about.
You know nothing about, and you don't have to. You only drink this thing once, right? And so I think that. Right now where this message was learning about that, provision, what's our next step?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to use self-control right now, because I really feel like God has been showing me so many parallels and how significant trust is to faith. Them not really being the same thing. Trust is almost getting your training wheels off.
Yeah.
And we have got to take this season of trusting God seriously, so that season of faith and movement can even be possible. Trust is almost a precursor to that. And I think we skip over it. I think we move into other things, and I think we say we trust God. In fact, when our church sings, "I trust in God," it gets the loudest it gets in there. But if we really trust in God, there's going to be some fruit in our life of really trusting God, which is like peace in situations that aren't really peaceful. Really doing what God said, even though it doesn't actually seem right and it doesn't make sense to us. We faithfully continue doing that thing. And so we're learning that in this season to prepare us for the next season that God's calling us into, where He is going to be even greater glorified in our lives. Not so we're greatly glorified, so that He can be even greater glorified. But He does do that through faith and partnership with man. But first things first, He's got to establish trust and dependence with man. So this past week we were really leaning into like the resources that God's providing, and then coming up this Sunday I want to lean more into actual like trusting and how significant that relationship with trust is for where God's really leading us.
That's good. And I think a good way to not wrap up this message, but I like a good piece of it that we can kind of get into for a second here, is that you said the provision God has for you is located where He's called you. I think that's an important part too, right? And it's like these checkpoints. You always see like in the movies where like they're like trying to lead somebody somewhere, or lead a dog or an animal, whatever. They like put little treats on the ground, like following this trail. And it's like you follow this trail, you get these pieces. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like in this way too, like this provision that God has for you. Like when you follow the map, going back to you holding the Bible on screen and be like, when you follow the map and you go in the right way, He's gonna be able to have this provision. But if you're missing provision, it might be because you're not following the route that He has for you. You're not on the route,
And that's it. We usually turn that on God and go, He's not being very faithful. Like, I don't actually think you're in alignment with Him. And so understanding that, I kept sounding like the drop spot. And that's where the cloud was. When the cloud would move, that would tell the people to move. And also, I mean, there's so many parallels in the wilderness, but even when the people would move and they'd get to the new location, they've been traveling all day. We're talking about millions of people when you factor in, or probably 1 million people when you factor in women and children. So these people were families. It wasn't just soldiers marching around. It was families, women, children, newborn babies, grandma and grandpa. Like it was the whole families. And they would move to a new location just because the cloud would move. And when they got there, before anyone would set up their personal tents, they would come and set up the house of God first. So even in that, I mean, are we really a people that will move when God says move, and the priority is making sure He is covered and He is set up before we even think about ourselves? Like, wow, that's a pretty big thing He was teaching them. And what were we talking about? I got so excited about that.
Talking about the provision, the
drop spot. And so to think about that manna was going to be where that cloud was. And so many times the cloud feels like, okay, I see it moving, but I'll do that. For me right now, my movement is August the 12th. I've told everyone in my life I'll do it August the 12th because in my timeline that makes sense for me. It's going to be a little easier for me to do things.
I got some other things I got planned.
Aspen's gonna be back in school, so August the 12th. I've told everybody, like if I've told you this, I'm probably not telling the truth. I've told everybody I know, I'll have lunch with you August the 12th.
You got a lot of lunch
week,
days.
I'm doing coffee dates with everybody that week. But we do that sometimes with the Lord. We tell Him our schedule's going to be off of convenience, not off of submission. And so then whenever God's not providing for us, we're bitter towards Him. And it's like, well, He is providing where He told us to be. And that might be in front of us, it might be behind us, wherever that is. that is where the provision that we need is. And again, it's not always monetary. I think, again, back to Egypt, we're like, oh, so if I do what God says, I can quit my job and he's going to bring me money. Like, that's probably not it.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge risky thing you're going to have to follow the Lord on.
Yeah.
But sometimes provision is, you keep forgiving that person and he's going to provide you with peace every day.
Yeah.
So you can do that again tomorrow.
Yeah.
You keep showing up for work, and that boss that's been a complete jerk to you, God's going to give you a different grace and a new confidence to be able to carry that and have some wisdom to even maybe speak into his life. Sometimes that's the drop spot. It's this, can you handle the little assignment?
Yeah.
And we're missing the little assignment because we're so endeavored for, like, we're going to do great things for God, or God's going to do great things for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, God's really trying to give you some assignments right now that actually don't involve a lot of faith.
Yeah.
They involve a lot of obedience and a lot of trust. Can we even do that?
Yeah, that's good. If you were to take, this message and really, shortly try to encourage, us believers that are building towards the ultimate goal, which is to be confident in our faith in God, right? Our next step is trust. We'll get there after, on Sunday. But right now, in this provision, like, what can we learn about provision that'll get us thinking in the right mindset?
Well, that's part of his nature, that he is a provider and he wants to provide, and we've got to recognize the way that we've been thinking and seeing things isn't always God's way.
Yeah. And
the way we are stewarding our relationships and our life in itself and the things that we're doing, are we really doing that under the influence of God? And I'm gonna be honest, this week I have had so many times I'm waking up going, Lord, today, if I'm out of alignment with your cloud, put me back under it. And I'll be in a conversation with somebody and I can just lean into the visual of sitting under that cloud, and I will begin responding differently, because I don't think I am being honest about the impact that Egypt still has on me. And I think that would be my encouragement for this week, Clouds and Crackers, is going, you can't begin to see the provision of God until you change your idea of what provision is.
That's good.
And God was providing them with manna every day to prepare them and teach them. But you know what they'd say? They'd say, it was so much better in Egypt. In Egypt, we were eating steak and lobster. Like, no, you were not. You were in chains, in a cell, but you keep trying to relate it to what you know. I don't think, I love this quote that I heard or read in a book this week, and it said, sometimes our heart will take us places that our head can't fit. And I don't think our head is always going to fit where God's taking us. I don't think our head fits in the promised land. It's going to be our heart. It's going to be our spirit. And so I think that's part of, like, a good thing for people to sit and really absorb on, like, how much of Egypt is still in me? Let me be honest. And, can I actually start auditing some of the areas of my life? Am I looking to God as my provider? Or do I do that for like a minute? Okay, I'm gonna let God provide the situation. I'm gonna give it to the Lord, and I'm gonna just pray for my enemy here, and it's gonna be great. I ain't that's rage bait for me. I'm not letting people disrespect me. And we go back and forth. And so, like, on our little Egyptian map, instead of it being like, it's like this way, back to Egypt, back to over here. And we're always feeling like we're spiritually not moving forward. It might be because we're not. Until we start trusting God and start moving with Him, we really aren't moving anywhere.
That's good. Well, I'm excited for this next message, leaning into trust. Us as a church, being able to learn how to go from faith, or how to get to faith, going on this level of, knowing that God's a provider, knowing that we can trust Him. And then going back to last week, like, realizing it's time to move, let's go, So thank you for sitting down with us today. I'm excited for that next one, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. If you want to check out full messages, you can find us at LS Church on all podcast platforms. And you can watch full services with worship at LS Church Alvin on YouTube.